going to look at the houses of Pompeii. This is a great place to start our exploration of Roman life and Pompeian life because the household is such an important part. And we're going to look at it a little bit in comparison to a modern house, but also just to see what the houses that the Romans lived in looked like. We're going to center our investigation in the city of Pompeii, which is where our stories take place. This is also a wonderful place to look at Roman houses because they've been so well preserved by the volcano that buried Pompeii, and we're going to learn more about that next week in the archaeology of Pompeii. So all the pictures we're going to be looking at today are from Pompeii. They are from different houses, various households within the city, so that we can get pictures of all the rooms that we want, but they are all similar to what our family, Caecilius' family, would have lived in the city of Pompeii. So let's start with the street. This is a street in Pompeii, one of the main streets. And one of the first things you can notice about Roman houses is that they face directly onto the street. So you can see these are doorways, here, 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 all along the street. These are doorways directly into Roman houses. So there's no front walkway, no front garden, no grass, no anything like that. People just walked directly into the houses from the street. You can see here sidewalks on either side where people could walk, pedestrians. Here's a little modern pedestrian using it in the ruins of Pompeii. And this is the main street area where carts, horses, litters carrying people would have gone. Now, can anyone tell me what they think these are? These are very interesting Roman invention. And one of the things we should also note about a Roman road is that it could get very disgusting. It could really get messy. Horses would poop, people would throw their human waste out of windows, and it would get all in the street. It would have been very smelly and very disgusting. So what these are, in fact, are an ancient crosswalk. A pedestrian on one side would use these as stepping stones to go from one side of the road to the other and successfully cross the street without getting their feet in any kind of disgusting waste that happened to be in the road. So these are really a very ingenious ancient crosswalk. Another thing we can notice about Roman houses is the small, high windows. Now these are mostly to conserve heat, to keep the houses warm in the cooler seasons, but also to provide some privacy so that people couldn't look in your windows at any time and look into your house. You can also see from this picture that the Roman house is based around two courtyard-style areas. One here, and then also you can see one in the back there. These are really the hearts of the home, these two central areas that the rest of the rooms in a Roman house center around. So we'll see that in our next picture, which is a map of a Pompeian house. So here you can see the general map of what a Pompeian house's layout would have been like. And then I've also compared it to a modern house in this diagram. Now the first thing we see in a Pompeian house, for one right here, is an impluvium. And this is in fact not something that we see in a modern house at all, because we have running water while the Romans didn't. Now you can clearly see the impluvium in this picture and the conpluvium above it. The impluvium is a rainwater pool, and the idea is that the rainwater would rain in through the conpluvium and into the impluvium, where it would be collected. There would be a cistern underneath to catch any overflow or any runoff that might have occurred, and this is where the family would get their water for drinking, for eating, washing, cleaning, anything that they needed water for, which really makes it the heart of the Roman home. Now later on the Romans did develop aqueducts and piping that would pipe water directly into the houses, but this was really only for the wealthiest of families, and most houses still maintained an impluvium anyway. Number 2 we can see is the triclinium or dining room. Notice in the Pompeian house there are 2 of these. We'll get into that a little more later. While in a modern house, there's typically only one. Number 3 is the tablinum or study, which is much like a modern office that people might have in their home. However, number 4 on our diagram is something else that we don't typically see in a modern household, and that is a Lerarium, or a shrine to the household gods and ancestors. While we may see this in some modern households, it's not necessarily the fixture for us that it was for the Romans, present in the atrium in the heart of their home. Number 5 are the bedrooms, the cubiculum. You notice there's 4 of them right up here near the front of the house. In a modern house, often there are bedrooms more towards the back of the house to keep them a little quieter, but again, we can see multiple bedrooms throughout the house. Number 6 is the hortus. You can see the garden here in the back. This was the other courtyard area of the Roman home. These circles represent columns. There was often a peristylum, a colonnade, in the back garden to provide some shade so that people could walk in the shade, and then a garden in the center with all kinds of plants and shrubs and different things. And again, a common feature of a modern house to have a backyard and a garden. Number 7 is the culina, or the kitchen. No house is complete without, right there. And again, our modern house has a culina. And of course, lastly, the latrina, or the bathroom, located, my favorite, right beside the kitchen. I think that's really the best place that you could put a bathroom, is right next to your kitchen. Notice in the modern house, the bathroom is all the way over here, not anywhere close to the kitchen. But of course, the Romans didn't have that same aversion that we do now. Let's start our tour of the house by looking at the janua, or the doorway of the Roman house. This is where people would first enter the house. Now, you'll notice that all of these images have an open janua. You shouldn't think that the doorways of Pompeii and Roman houses were just open to the public. There, of course, would have been quite heavy wooden doors in these places, but unfortunately, they haven't survived the test of time. So the doorways look open now, but there certainly would have been wooden doors in place that have unfortunately rotted away. You can also see that the janua are very nicely decorated. You can see the painting here and here. And also in this janua, you can see we're looking right into the atrium. There's quite a bit of painting on the walls here as well. From the janua, we move into the atrium, which is the heart of the Roman household. It contained, as I've already mentioned, the impluvium to catch the rainwater, an essential water source for the family. But it was also an important part of the house because it was a meeting place for guests and visitors. Families would want to have an impressive atrium with all kinds of decorations and rich decor to show off for any guests or visitors who might be coming into their home. As you can see in this picture, there are some very tall, impressive columns that give some great height to this atrium. And it really was the congregating point for the family in the house as well. Most events, most activity would happen in the atrium of a household. As I've mentioned, the Romans were very big on painting their walls. They painted beautiful scenes of architecture, temples, religious scenes, scenes from theater on their walls, and we can see all of those here just from these few samples from Pompeii, how beautiful, how bright and colorful all the artwork on their walls was, and they really did a wonderful job. You can also see that they decorated their floors with mosaics. Mosaics are pictures made out of tiny tiles, either stone, sometimes glass or clay, that are colored and placed in a pattern to form a picture. So this one is probably the clearest. You can see all the tiny little white tiles that make up these areas of the mosaic, and then all the black tiles and red tiles used to form the shape of the dog. Here, the tiles form a geometric pattern, and down here you really get a picture of how intricate, how detailed, and how beautiful mosaics could really be when we look at all these different types of gladiators who are fighting and showing off their weapons in this picture. This would have been on the floor of a Roman household. Not only did they decorate their walls, but they also decorated their floors very beautifully. The tablinum, or the study in a Roman house, contained a desk for working, shelves for scrolls and other materials, and sometimes a vault box for household money. This would be a box that was made out of lead in order to be very secure and heavy, and the father of the household could have kept any money for the house in that vault box. Now, this tablinum looks very open because the roof and the walls are missing, but it would have actually been quite an open room since it was open to the atrium on this side and open to the garden on this side, making it nice and cool in the summer, getting that breeze straight through from the garden. Pretty important if you're going to be spending a lot of time working in there. In our own stories, with Caecilius in his house, we know that he was in fact actually a banker because of the banking materials that were found in his tablinum, a vault box among other things. The triclinium is another very important room in the Roman house. It is the dining room. And as I mentioned before, there were typically 2 triclinium in a Roman household, a summer and a winter. Now, this is an example of what could be a winter triclinium. It would be, if we go all the way back to our plan of a Roman house, on the inside of the house to keep it a little bit warmer in the winter. Whereas the summer triclinium would be out here on the outside, open to the garden to catch all those nice breezes in the summer and keep it that little bit cooler. Very important if you are in a hot place like Pompeii. The Romans did not eat at a table and chairs as we do today. Instead, they ate reclining on raised couches, and that's what these are here, 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 and here. And you can also see them in this summer triclinium, here, here, and here. So they would lean on their one elbow. You can try it out at your desk or your computer if you like. They would sort of prop their chin up on one elbow and lie down on their side, and then they would use their other hand to feed themselves, so to grab food and eat it. Slaves would bring food and mixed wine into the center, so this is the space where slaves could walk, and then they would put the food on these sort of low raised areas here so that the people could reach it and eat it from where they sat. And again, you can see that here, just barely the sort of low places for the food along the sides. The cubiculum was the Roman bedroom, and when you go into a Roman house, you'll see that the cubicula are very small, and in fact, they have no windows. This picture is a little misleading. This is a modern window that an archaeologist cut into this wall, destroyed the paintings, which is really terrible, but it was cut into this wall. This bedroom should not have any windows at all, so that's not actually there. And they typically did not put a lot of furniture or items into their bedrooms because they were so small and dark that they were used really only for sleeping. So they would have been quite dark, only lit by a lantern, a candle, a little lamp that you could bring in. However, they are still, as you can see from these pictures, richly decorated. There's a lovely mosaic on the floor here, and you can get a real sense of the beauty of the wall paintings in any of these cubicula. So they were very lovely, but not commonly used rooms except for sleeping. Let's have a look at the Lerarium. The Lerarium is the household shrine for the family gods of a Roman family. These are called the Lares and the Penates. So you can see the Lerarium right here in the corner of the atrium, and it was typically sort of this square-shaped space with space on the inside where the family could leave offerings. So whether that was a large offering like a small pigeon that had been killed as a sacrifice to the gods, or a small offering like a bit of wine, a piece of bread, a piece of cheese from your dinner that you could offer to the household gods throughout the course of your day. This was very common for the Romans, and they really wove their religious offerings into their daily life. This is an image that might be painted on a Lerarium, and it shows the Lares and the Penates in the picture, and then there's a small shelf where you can leave your offerings there. So this was a key component of Roman family life. The culina, or the kitchen, was used by slaves to prepare family meals. So typically the family would not go into the culina, only the slaves. And you can see from these pictures the oven where the cooking would occur. So here's your double oven right here. A fire would be made underneath. And then this is the cooking surface on the top where pots such as these could be placed and food cooked in them and prepared. You could also have a shelf in one of these ovens like this and use it to bake bread inside the oven. The culina was typically quite a small room towards the back of the house, although open to the garden to try and keep at least a little bit of airflow going through in the summer when it would be quite hot. Lastly, let's have a look at the latrina, which is of course the bathroom. Only wealthy households would have their own latrina. Poorer households would have chamber pots, which, as I mentioned at the beginning, could be emptied into the streets. Or there are also public bathrooms in Roman cities where people could go to use a washroom. A Roman latrina had running water running underneath the toilet spaces. Now these are the toilet spaces here where someone could sit. This would be all stoned in so that you can't see underneath. And the human waste would fall right into the running water and be swept away. So this was actually quite sanitary and a useful invention of the Romans, a good use of their running water. However, only in the wealthiest of households. Oh, and then at the very back of the house, of course, is the peristylum, or the hortus, the garden, which was very important in the summer for allowing those cool breezes into the rooms of the house and throughout the house, and also an important place for growing plants, flowers, herbs, and things like that that they might wish to have in the household. The peristylum was an excellent place for socialization and gathering. People would sit or walk in the shade of the peristylum on summer days and enjoy the beauty of nature without the harshness of the Italian sun. So the peristylum was really a nice social place in the Roman household and also very beautiful, as you can see in this picture down here. That brings us to the end of our Roman houses. Thank you for listening, and have a look at your textbook, pages 14 to 16, if you'd like any further information. Thank you.